Yo, what is good people, Ben from Lover of Tech, and we are back with another video. This time, camera comparison. Oppo Find X7 Ultra versus the Galaxy S24 Ultra versus the iPhone 15 Pro Max. And we're going to be testing everything from pictures, videos, daylight and low light for the rear cameras and front facing camera to see which camera system works best on these flagship devices. Let's get into the specs and then back into the main camera comparison. Now, the specifications for the camera hardware on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, S24 Ultra, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max will be linked in the description below. And all these phones have been updated to their latest software version. And considering the Galaxy S24 at this time of this recording, it is on the latest March update. Now, the best way to watch this camera comparison is at the highest resolution in 4K 60 on the largest display possible with headphones so you can hear the audio switching in video. Now, there will be chapters linked in the description below, but definitely sit back, relax, get your popcorn, get your milk, and get your drink. It's going to be worth watching as this is a definitive extensive camera comparison. We are now recording in 4K UHD 60 frames per second video recorder mode on the front facing camera on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, Galaxy S24 Ultra, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. And we're just seeing how the image quality is like, sharpness, details, color, dynamic range, and of course stabilization with a quick run. We're recording in a 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recorder mode on the front facing camera on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, Galaxy S24 Ultra, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. And we're just seeing how the image quality is like, sharpness, detail, colors, dynamic range, and of course video stabilization with a quick run. We're still recording on the front-facing camera on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, the Galaxy S24 Ultra, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. We're now in each respective video portrait mode, cinematic mode, which simulates the background blur effect on a front-facing camera. Now, for the iPhone and the Samsung, this is available in 4K 30. It's a separate dedicated shooter mode, whereas the Oppo is only limited to 1080p 30. And this is something that you do have to press the f-stop. And of course, the default mode simulated for the Oppo and the iPhone is f4.5, and the blur level for the Samsung is blur level 5. Now, we're just going to go through the differences and the benefits of the shooter mode. Let's start with the most flexible during recording, which is the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. You can of course pause recording and continue on the same clip. Can't take pictures, but you can do different blur effects: big circle, color point, glitch, back to normal blur. You can then remove the blur altogether, or go to the maximum, which is blur 7, back down to the default 5. I don't believe the Oppo gives you flexibility to change the blur during recording or even after. You can only do it before you start recording, but you can pause recording and take pictures while recording, which you can't do in terms of, you know, taking pictures while recording on the Samsung. The iPhone doesn't allow you to have different blur effects, and you can't change the blur intensity during recording, but after recording you can change the blur position and blur intensity as it captures all the metadata. So that's a really good look on the iPhone as well. We are now recording in a 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recording mode on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, Galaxy S24 Ultra, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. And we're just seeing how the image quality is like, video stabilization with a quick run. Let's switch to the ultra wide, as we do have full flexibility to switch between all the lenses. Quick run. Move over to 2x. As they all do have a 2x mode on the camera UI. Let's move to 3x, which optically favors the Oppo and the Samsung. steady walk. Alright, let's move to the sign. 5. 5X optically favors the Samsung and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. And we're going to go to 6X. You see the optical quality improves on the Oppo. We're going to do 6X. Go. We're going to come back to 1X, 1X, 1X. So we're going to demonstrate some of the flexibility that we get recording in 4K 30 between these camera systems. Starting with the least flexible. As you've seen with the iPhone, it does allow you to switch between the rear lenses. You can't pause recording and continue on the same clip, but you can take pictures, and you cannot flip to the selfie camera. Now with the Oppo, that's the second most flexible. It allows you to switch between all the rear lenses. As you've seen, it does allow you to pause video recording and continue on the same video clip and take pictures, but you can't flip to the selfie camera. And with the most flexible being the Galaxy S24 Ultra, where it does allow you to switch between all the lenses on the rear camera, pause recording and continue on the same clip, take pictures, and then takes it a step further by allowing you to flip to the same selfie camera on the same clip. As you can see, 4K video recording, still on the same clip, flip to the selfie camera. We're now recording in a 4K UHD 60 frames per second video recorder mode on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, Galaxy S24 Ultra, and iPhone 15 Pro Max. And we're just seeing how the image quality is like at 4K at a higher frame rate, 60 FPS when it comes to image quality, colors, details, sharpness, dynamic range, and of course, stabilization with a quick run. Let's switch to the ultra wide, as we do have flexibility to do this in 4K 60 on all these camera systems, which is great to see. Quick run. Let's switch to 2X. .3X, which again optically favors the Oppo and the Samsung. Digital on the iPhone. Let's move to the sign. 5X. Which optically favors the iPhone and the Samsung. Digital on the 3X. On the Oppo. And again, when we go to 6X, you see the optical quality does improve on the Oppo. 6X digital on the iPhone. 6X digital on the Samsung. To the 1X, back to 1X, back to 1X. Again, demonstrating the flexibility of recording that you get in 4K 60 on this camera system. It's the same as in 4K 30. You're limited to not being able to pause recording and continue recording on the same clip on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. You can't flip to the selfie, but you can change between the rear cameras. Oppo allows you to at least pause recording and continue recording on the same clip, take pictures, flip between the rear cameras, but you can't flip to the selfie. With the most flexible being the Galaxy S24 Ultra, which allows you to switch between all the rear cameras, pause recording, continue on the same clip, take pictures, and takes it a step further by allowing you to flip to the front-facing camera while recording on the same clip. As you can see, 4K 60 recording, same clip, the ability to flip to the selfie camera. I get excited about this part because Samsung have the most flexible 4K 60 recording, the most usable on any smartphone now, especially when it comes to the flagship. I do wish they added this to the S24 and S24 Plus. It is only limited to the S24 Ultra, but at least it's there. This is such a good look. We are now recording in the 8K 30 frames per second video recording mode on the Galaxy S24 Ultra versus the 4K 30 on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra and 4K 30 on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Now, all of these phones have high resolution sensors for the main camera, but it's only the Galaxy S24 Ultra that allows you to maximize all of that resolution for video with 8K 30 on the main camera with no crop, full stabilization. We're just seeing the detailed image quality that we get. Quick run. We're still recording in the 8K 30 frames per second video recording mode on the Galaxy S24 Ultra versus the 4K 30 on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. In this particular situation, this is using the optical zoom sensors on each camera, which is 5x on the Samsung, 6x on the Oppo, and 5x on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. The difference is because the 5x zoom on the Samsung is 50 megapixels now. Samsung also allows you to do 8K recording on that. That is brilliant. Along for the day where the ultra wide and the 3x zooms become 50 megapixels, then we can have 8K recording on all the rear sensors on a Samsung camera. We are now in their respective super steady action mode, super stabilization mode on the Galaxy S24 Ultra and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Quick disclaimer, it doesn't look like the Oppo Find X7 Ultra has this feature. We've looked, searched in the UI. If anyone knows if it has it and we've missed it, let us know in the comment section below, but it doesn't have it. Now with the iPhone, it does do this at 2.8K up to 60 FPS, and it does it on all the lenses, ultra wide 1x, 2 and 5x, which is great, really dominant here. Next best is obviously the Galaxy S24 Ultra. It does this in 2.5K 1440p up to 60 FPS. It does it on the ultra wide 1x and 2x, no further than that. So we're going to test it with a heavy, fast run. Still in their respective super stabilization mode, super steady action mode. We've now switched to the 1x. We're going to test it to see how it is with a heavy run. Still in their respective super steady action mode, we've now switched to 2x. And we're going to test it to see how the stabilization is like with a fast, heavy run. And we've now switched to the 5x optical zoom. This is where the iPhone dominates. It's the only one that allows you to use the extended zoom to do such a mode. Let's test it. So we're now recording in the 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recording mode on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, the Galaxy S24 Ultra, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. And we're just seeing how the image quality is like with me in the frame as a subject, with the rear camera, with the environment, and just see how they perform. Slow walk back. And stop. Let's now switch to the ultra wide. We're just going to see how the perspective ultra wide looks like. We're still in a 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recording mode on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, the Galaxy S24 Ultra, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. We're doing a 2x crop on the main wide sensor just to see how the image quality is like with me in the frame as a subject with the environment. 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recording mode on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, the Galaxy S24 Ultra, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. We are in a 3x zoom mode, and this optically favors the Oppo and the Samsung, whereas the iPhone 15 Pro Max is still doing a digital crop on the main wide sensor. We're just going to see the image quality differences with me and the frame as the subject, as well as the environment. We're still in the 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recording mode on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, Galaxy S24 Ultra, iPhone 15 Pro Max. We're now in the 5x optical zoom mode, which favors Galaxy S24 Ultra and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. For the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, it is doing a 5x digital crop on the 3x periscope zoom lens. We're just going to see the image quality difference with me and the frame as the subject and their environment. We're still recording in the 4K UHD 30 frames per second video Oppo Find X7 Ultra, Galaxy S24 Ultra, and iPhone 15 Pro Max. We're just in a 6x zoom mode. This is optically favouring the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. We're just seeing the image quality with me and the frame as the subject and the environment. We are now recording in the 4K UHD 60 frames per second video recording mode on Oppo Find X7 Ultra, Galaxy S24 Ultra, and iPhone 15 Pro Max. We're just seeing how the image quality changes when in 4K at a high frame rate at 60 FPS with the rear cameras, with me and the frame as the subject, and with the environment. Let's switch through the ultra wide. See how the ultra wide perspective is. We're still recording in the 4K UHD 60 frames per second video recording mode on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, the Galaxy S24 Ultra, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. We're in their 2x crop mode on the main wide sensor, just seeing how the image quality is like with me and the frame as the subject and the environment. We're still recording in the 4K UHD 60 frames per second video recording mode on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, Galaxy S24 Ultra, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Now this optically favors the S24 Ultra and the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, whereas the iPhone 15 Pro Max is doing a digital crop still on the main wide sensor. Let's just see the image quality difference with me and the frame as the subject and the environment. We're still recording in 4K UHD 60 frames per second on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, Galaxy S24 Ultra, iPhone 15 Pro Max. And we've now gone into the 5 optical mode, and this optically favors the S24 Ultra and the iPhone 15 Pro Max, whereas the Oppo is still doing a digital crop in the 3x periscope zoom. We're just seeing the image quality with me and the frame as the subject and also the environment. We're still recording in a 4K 60 FPS video recording mode on Oppo Find X7 Ultra, Galaxy S24 Ultra, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. We're now in a 6x zoom mode. This optically favors the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, whereas the others are doing a slight digital crop on their 5x sensors. We're just going to see the image quality with me and the frame as the subject and the environment. We're now recording in the 8K 30 frames per second video recording mode on the Galaxy S24 Ultra versus the 4K video recording on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Again, these all do have main sensor high resolutions, but it's Samsung that allows you to fully utilize all of that resolution for video in 8K 30 with a great wide field of view, no crop and video stabilization. But in this case, we just want to see the image quality detail with meaner frame as the subject and the environment. We're still recording in the 8K 30 frames per second video recorder mode on the Galaxy S24 Ultra, and because it does have a 50 megapixel 5X, Samsung allows you to shoot 8K video on that as well, versus the 4K 30 on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. We're now in the respective video portrait mode, cinematic mode, with the background blur simulated for video on the rear cameras on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, S24 Ultra, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Again, with the iPhone and the Samsung, you do have the option of doing this in 4K 30, whereas the Oppo is limited to 1080p 30. Now, here's some of the benefits as I demonstrated when I was doing it on the selfie camera. With the Galaxy S24 Ultra, you can actually change the portrait effects while you're recording. So you can go from the blur mode that you have to different ones like circle point, glitch, all the different effects. You can actually change the blur all the way down to 0 and remove it altogether. Bring it back up to 5, up to a maximum of 7. Of course, back to the default, which is 5. That is a flexibility you have while you're recording, but you can't do any edits after. Now, with the iPhone, you can't change any effects while you're recording. You don't have any different effects mode. You can't change the blur intensity while you're recording. You can do it before, and most importantly, you can do it after you finish recording with the different blur points and the blur intensity. So that's really good on the iPhone as well. We're still in a respective video portrait mode. We've now gone into the 2X to see how the image quality is like between these three devices. Hey, the sun's out, so let's work with it and enjoy it and see how it helps when it comes to image quality and dynamic range testing. Respective video portrait mode. We've now gone into the 3X mode on all of them. Now just be aware that the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra is not doing this with the 3X optical zoom lens. It's still actually doing the 3X digital crop on the main wide sensor. Why Samsung doesn't opt to use the 3X zoom lens is beyond me, because back in the day on the S22 Ultra, even though it was only doing this in 1080p, it was using a 3X dedicated zoom lens. And I believe the Oppo is still doing the same. It's not actually using the 3X dedicated zoom lens. I feel like it's still doing a main digital crop. Of course, the iPhone doesn't have a 3X dedicated zoom lens, so it doing a digital crop makes absolute sense. We're still in their respective video portrait mode between the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, Galaxy S24 Ultra, and iPhone 15 Pro Max. Now, the Oppo Find X7 Ultra is showing that there is a 6x zoom now, but we've just confirmed it. It's still doing a digital crop on a main wide sensor. It's not using a 6x optical zoom, which makes no sense. Obviously, these others can't go anything beyond the 3x for video portrait mode. It makes no sense why the optical sensor is not using this mode. It will help the fact that it's only shooting in 1080p 30. This is just a quick test of the maximum video zoom mode in 4K 30 on all these cameras. Let's start with the ultra wide. One X. Two X. We're just going to go into their optical ranges. We're not doing anything to match. We've done that already. $20X, $18X, $15X. Let's try to bring them all into a fair frame. All right. 20X on the Samsung, 18X on the Oppo, 15X on the iPhone. Is it legible? Yeah, it's legible. Alright, let's come back to 1X, 1X, 1X. So we're now in the new dual record mode on the Galaxy S24 Ultra. This replaces director's view, and you can select two lenses to record at the same time. You can actually save them as two separate files, or actually save them as previewed in this picture-in-picture mode. And what's great about this is that it does record in 4K 30 FPS, which is really good to see. And of course, you can pause recording and continue on the same clip, take pictures while you're recording, and also flip between the different cameras. This is really, really good. I really like dual recording mode on the S24 Ultra. So this is the multi-video mode on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. It is limited to 1080p, but you can, of course, switch between the rear lenses. As you can see, 1, 3, and 6X. You've got the selfie. You've got different split views in terms of split, bubble, and multi-view. So that's really good. You can't change that while you're recording, but you can actually select that before you record. I really like the circle crop mode. And this is the multi-video on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. Quick autofocusing test in 4K 30 on a Galaxy S24 Ultra. Press the focus enhancer. allows you to use the macro mode in video. Quick autofocusing test on the S24 Ultra in 4K 30 in low light. Quick autofocusing test in 4K 30 on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. Quick autofocusing test in 4K 30 on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra in low light. Quick autofocusing test in 4K 30 on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Quick autofocusing test on the iPhone 15 Pro Max in 4K 30 in low light. We are now recording in 4K UHD 30 frames a second on the Galaxy S24 Ultra, Oppo Find X7 Ultra, iPhone 15 Pro Max, starting with the rear main wide sensor and just seeing how the low light performance is like across these three flagship devices. Let's move to the ultra wide. Two X, 3X, 3X. Five X, 5X. And 6X, seeing how the lens change is on the Oppo. Six. Back to 1X, back to 1X, back to 1X. We're now recording on the front-facing camera, selfie on the Galaxy S24 Ultra, Oppo Find X7 Ultra, iPhone 15 Pro Max, and just seeing how the low light performance is on the front-facing camera on these flagship devices. We're now recording in the 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recording mode, and this is on the rear camera on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, Galaxy S24 Ultra, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. We're just seeing how the low light performance is on the rear camera. We're sticking to 30 FPS, which is the better frame rate to use when in low light, and just seeing how the image quality is like across these three flagship devices. Let's do a quick switch to the ultra wide actually. I'm going to come a bit closer to see the ultra wide perspective. And back to the 1X. We're now in the video portrait mode on the Galaxy S24 Ultra, iPhone 15 Pro Max, and the Find X7 Ultra from Oppo. Now, with the iPhone and the Samsung, they do give you the 4K 30 FPS option. We're just going to stick to the main camera lens in the 1X zoom mode, whereas the Oppo is limited to 1080p 30. We've tried to boost the strength of the blur on the Oppo and the iPhone to its maximum. We know in low light, the iPhone tends to struggle to do this. It might need a bit more flash. It might, you know, yeah, it's just one of those. Samsung tends to do a lot better in low light when it comes to video portrait mode. We're still in the video portrait mode, 4K 30 on the Galaxy S24 Ultra. Now with the flash on, honestly, generally speaking, Samsung does really well without the flash. And with the flash, I think it really just helps to make sure that the background blur simulated effect is much more consistent. So it's a good look from Samsung. We're now in the video portrait mode on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. Again, it's limited to 1080p 30. We've turned on the flash to see if it helps it anyway compared to when the flash is off. Seeing how well it simulates the video background blur in low light. So we're still in the video portrait mode on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, 4K 30. What we tried to do is turn on the flash to see if it helps it in any way to be able to simulate the background blur. I'm giving this the best chance for the iPhone, but it looks like it probably still isn't going to work. Now on to the second half of this camera comparison. Let's look at the photos between the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, Galaxy S24 Ultra, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Now again, one thing I will put it out there is that to save this video being long, I'm gonna try and make each picture analysis round as quick fire as possible. So if I am going too fast for you, definitely feel free to pause it. You're watching at the highest resolution so you can pinch to zoom, really analyze it the best way possible. Now let's start with the landscape images, starting with the ultra wide across all these devices. And I have to say, in terms of the image quality and detail, definitely the Oppo Find X7 Ultra really stands out well. And it makes sense because it is working with a high resolution 50 megapixel sensor compared to the others, which are 12 megapixels. So just bear that in mind. But again, the colors on the iPhone are definitely the ones that I like in terms of the balance. Details great on the Oppo, and the Galaxy S24 Ultra is somewhat a bit more muted, but might be more realistic to the scene that we're seeing. Now we go to the main wide sensor. Things look very much consistent as we go through. Now we're kicking into all of them using a main wide high megapixel sensor, which is 200 megapixel, bin down to 12 on the Galaxy S24 Ultra. With the iPhone 15 Pro Max, there is a mode now by default where it does bin to 24 megapixels when there's enough light during the day, but at nighttime it's 12 megapixels. And then obviously the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, it is binning down to 12 megapixels. So very consistent across the board, better detail across all of them. Now let's move into the extended zoom ranges, starting with the 2X. This is doing a digital crop and a main wide sensor. And again, I love the fact that there's just consistent colors and image quality as we go through. Now, in terms of how all of them hold up, all of them actually hold up really well. I'd probably say the Galaxy S24 Ultra holds up best when it comes to detail, with less color shifting around the yellow gate compared to what we're seeing on the Oppo. And the iPhone 15 Pro Max does hold up really well. All of them are doing pretty good. Let's move over to the 3x zoom. And in this particular situation, the Galaxy S24 Ultra and the Oppo Find X7 Ultra are favored here because they have optical sensors at this mid-range zoom, whereas the iPhone is still doing a digital crop and a main wide sensor, so it starts to fall apart compared to what you're seeing in the image clarity on the Oppo and the Galaxy S24 Ultra. Definitely, the detail of the Oppo is to be said to be the best, but I would say the color balance and exposure is looking really nice with the Galaxy S24 Ultra, but I do probably lean slightly towards the Oppo for more of the detail that you're getting there. But yeah, that's the difference in terms of the advantage that you get at 3x on these other devices. Now we'll move over to the 5x zoom range. This is where we're now optically favoring what we have on the Galaxy S24 Ultra and the iPhone 15 Pro Max, because they are now using an optical sensor, whereas the Oppo is still doing a digital crop and a mid-range 3x optical zoom that it uses. Now you can see that the Oppo really over sharpens it, and there's a lot of artificial, sharpening happening there, whereas the detail that you're getting is so natural on the Galaxy S24 Ultra. This is the new high resolution 50 megapixel sensor that they've got on the 5X, which I'm so glad they've implemented, and with the recent software updates it looks like it's tuned it a little bit better. Whereas what you're seeing on the iPhone is that it is actually well good in terms of the detail, but it does seem to be like a slight artificial sharpening that I'm seeing. Again, I'll give this one to the Galaxy S24 Ultra. Moving over to 6x zoom, this is where now we have the optical favor on the side of the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. And I've said this, I've always wanted a manufacturer to do a 0.5 or 0.6 ultra wide, a 1x, 2x, 3x, and 6x zoom. Oppo right now, especially with the 1x, ultra wide, 3x, and 6x all being 50 megapixels, right now have my favorite hardware system for a smartphone camera on a rear camera, and it really shows here. Once you kick into the 6x zoom, it's looking really good. While the others are still holding up, because again, the digital crop that they're applying on their 5x is not really that much. So yeah, they hold up really well. Now, let's go into the super extended zoom ranges. 10x zoom, this is where you're starting to see them really stretch their legs, and this is where the tetra prism lens on the iPhone 15 Pro Max compared to the periscopes really match up. And it's really just down to which one is an acquired taste. I really like what I'm seeing on all of them. You really can't pick wrong, which is good to say. Now, when we start going into the further extended zoom range, the iPhone does top out at 25x, whereas you do have a 30x stage for both the Galaxy S24 Ultra and the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. And of course, you can see the Oppo and the Galaxy are really showing out well. And I would say in terms of the color contrasting and the look of it, slightly, but not by much, the Oppo is winning it. If you look at the fine text around the red part, it's hard to read out, but it's actually much more defined, and you can clearly see the sports faculty constructed by sign in the middle. Much easier on the Oppo. So when we move over to the final stage, it's 100x maximum on the Galaxy S24 Ultra versus 120x on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. And again, not by much, but it's slightly better defined on the Oppo. Again, at this point, you're pulling hairs, and it's, just slight measurements. But yeah, when it comes to super extended, you do favor that slightly more on the Oppo compared to the Samsung next. And then, of course, the iPhone tops out at 25x, so it's not even part of this conversation. Now, when it comes to the high resolution shoot in JPEG modes, definitely the Oppo Find X7 Ultra across the board is the one that takes it. Whereas with the iPhone and the Samsung, it's either one or two of the sensors that have it, whereas the Oppo is 50 megapixels across all of them. So when you look at the ultra wide, there is a 50 megapixel mode for the Oppo, whereas the others are default to their 12 megapixels. And again, when you go into the main wide sensor, you do then kick in with the others with their high resolution modes. 50 megapixels, one of the modes that you have on the Galaxy S24 Ultra, 48 megapixels on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, and of course 50 megapixels on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. I will do additional crops at this stage so you can see the image quality difference that you get in this high resolution mode in landscape. And next is the 200 megapixel mode on the main wide sensor on the Galaxy S24 Ultra. And again, you can see that the image processing completely changes. It becomes way more saturated. It takes a lot of time in terms of storage, processing, and just it looks like the color processing completely changes. So just bear that in mind, that I think you really do need a lot of light. And again, in the UK at this time of year, you're not getting that much sunshine coming through. So we work with what we've got, and this is what we have. That's the image quality difference that you're seeing in the high resolution mode on the main wide sensor. And then when zooming in, there's two stages of high resolution mode that you get on the Oppo. First is the 3x, whereas the Galaxy S24 Ultra, the next high resolution is 50 megapixel at 5x. The iPhone only has against the high resolution on the main wide sensor. So the Oppo is very flexible in this particular situation, because then you do have the 6x zoom, which allows you to have 50 megapixels as well. Personally, when it comes to camera hardware configuration right now, Oppo is definitely my favorite when it comes to actual hardware on the rear cameras. All 50 megapixels, as large as possible, and it just makes it easier for image processing across the board. This is a very good look, Oppo. Well done. Let's take it to the front with some daylight selfie images of myself. And I have to say, in this particular situation, I've got to give it to the Galaxy S24 Ultra, then followed by the iPhone 15 Pro Max, and then the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. I feel like the Find X7 Ultra, it just reds my skin way too much, and I've tried to take off any image processing, filters, softening, retouch is all off. And yeah, I just feel like as good as the detail is, it's just making my skin a bit more red than I like. The iPhone is darkening me too much. But again, just remember, there are different photographic styles in the image processing for the iPhone. You can change in a setting that might favor, especially people like myself that we're part of the darker skin persuasion. But in this particular situation, by default, I'm gonna give it to the Galaxy S24 Ultra. It is definitely looking good. Now, I've always said this before, that when shooting portrait mode in a selfie camera with the iPhone, it does crop in, and in fact, the final image is a slightly lower resolution as well. It's best to just take a normal picture, go into pose, change it to portrait mode when it captures all the depth information of your surroundings, so you get that field of view. So that's the best way. I just hope Apple updates this. There's no need for it to do an additional crop and sacrifice field of view. But if we're just going to be focusing on a blur, all of them do a great job. You can't go wrong with either. I pretty much like all of them, to be fair, but if I'm going to stick to the consistency of the original image, then with the blur, I've got to give it to the Galaxy S24 Ultra, then the iPhone 15 Pro Max, but I have to duck points for the field of view loss in portrait mode, and then the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, great blur, but again, the image quality of my skin rendition is not something I really like. Now here's a close-up shot of this Funko Pop of Cal Kestis from Jedi Survivor and his trusted droid, BD1. And here is pretty much showing a test of minimum focusing distance on the main wide sensor. And iPhones with the iPhone 15 Pro Max, since the 14 Pro Max, have never really been good at this. There's a big sacrifice in how close you can get to a subject, whereas the Oppo and especially the Samsung really allow you to get up close and personal. Past a certain point, it does blur out, of course, but generally speaking, the Samsung is really good at allowing you to get as close as possible, generating that natural depth of field that comes of the larger main wide sensor that you have on there. But then this is where it's really important when it comes to macro mode. All of them do have a macro mode, and I've got to give it the iPhone. It really allows you to pull very close compared to the others when it comes to its macro mode, but all of them do a great job when it comes to the macro mode capabilities. But one thing I've noticed with the Find X7 Ultra is this is something where you've got that in a 1x mode and up to 3x mode where you're able to use the macro mode. So you don't have to necessarily get close to the subject. You can have a bit of distance separation and get closer. So I do like that about the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. That's something I really want to see on the others as well. So good luck on that Oppo in terms of the flexibility and focal range for macro mode. Right, last set of daylight images with the rear camera with me in the frame as the subject. And starting with the ultra wide, I would have to give this one to the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. I do like the image processing, shadow detail, clarity on the ultra wide, especially with me in the frame as the subject. Look, smartphones, they don't play nice with darker skin people usually. And in this particular, like this situation, I'd say the Oppo Find X7 Ultra is doing a great job. Then followed by the Galaxy S24 Ultra and then the iPhone 15 Pro Max. The iPhone 15 Pro Max, I just feel like it just makes me too dark and it crushes the shadows, but some might prefer it, but I do prefer the Galaxy S24 Ultra, then the iPhone 15 Pro Max after the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. Then moving to the main wide sensor, I would keep the same consistency, man. I've got to give it to the Oppo. Now, in this particular situation, I do wish that it brought the shadows up a bit more, but I do like the skin rendition. I think it's very accurate to how my skin will look outside in the day. Then I would give it to the Galaxy S24 Ultra. It does look a little bit washed out sometimes, but I do like it. Then followed by the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Now 2x mode. Again, the consistency across these cameras is really good. Same order. I'll definitely give it to the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, but I would say that the detail on the clarity is slightly better on the S24 Ultra and then the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Like the detail on the Galaxy S24 Ultra and then the Oppo in terms of the overall look and skin rendition and the processing. Now let's move over to 3x, and in the 3x mode, again, you are optically favoring what you have on the Oppo and the Galaxy S24 Ultra, and I have to give it again slightly to the Oppo, more because of the detail. I feel like this time round, the skin rendition Slightly reds a little bit on the Oppo, not by much, but I'll say the skin rendition definitely favors the S24 ever so slightly, but I do like the detail on the Oppo. Where's the iPhone 15 Pro Max? Again, it just makes me look a bit too dark in my personal opinion, and it does fall apart because it is still doing a digital crop of the main wide sensor. Now when we go into the 5x mode, this is optically now favoring more on the S24 Ultra and the iPhone 15 Pro Max, whereas the Oppo is still doing a crop on a 3x sensor, but the Oppo is holding up really well. Here, you can't go wrong with either. I would say the color processing wins it out ever so slightly on the Oppo, and then obviously the details better on the Samsung, and then followed by the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Now, 6x mode, here is where it's meant to be optically favoring the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, but the exposure on the Oppo really takes a hit here. So although the detail and the clarity is there, I don't like the exposure drop. I do like what I'm seeing on the S24 Ultra first, and then the iPhone 15 Pro Max, more based on exposure, but the detail is great across all of them. So this is a good look. Let's run it back with the high resolution modes. And again, this is where you have that favoring on Oppo's side. But you have to take into account in this particular situation with me and the frame as a subject, start with the ultra wide, the Oppo does take a huge hit, but it's more giving it credit that the mode is there. You just do have to consider potential loss in dynamic range and shadow detail when in this mode if you're using it with a human in the subject. Now, again, when we move over to the main wide sensor, you can see that there is a slight hit to dynamic range. You can see it in the clouds. It doesn't really hold up well compared to the others. So just bear that in mind. I would say that the image processing in high resolution on the main wide sensor is definitely best on the iPhone. And then I would say somewhere in between, dynamic range being better on the Galaxy S24 Ultra, whereas obviously the exposure is better on the Oppo. So it's a toss up when it comes to it. 200 megapixel mode, again, does slightly shift. It's pretty much a bit more consistent on the Galaxy S24 Ultra, but again, the principle stands where it depends what you're really looking for. A loss in dynamic range, better detail, better exposure. I would say that the iPhone and the main wide sensor is the one that I like the most. Now, when we're going into the extended zoom ranges, you do have the 3x 50 megapixel mode on the Oppo, and the processing is completely out of the window. I don't really like it. I think you have to take precaution. We tried it 3 times, and this is the best result that we had. So just take that in consideration in a high resolution mode with a human frame and a subject at 3x on the Oppo. And 6x is much better. Wow, the 6x high resolution mode, it's really good. I really like it on the Oppo. It's great on the Samsung at 5x as well, but I definitely like the Oppo when it comes to the 6x. Use that more for the high resolution mode if you're taking pictures of people. Portrait mode, now out of the gate, when it comes to the optical modes, the most flexible is definitely going to be the Samsung and the Oppo, just because of the fact that you've got a 1x, 2x, 3x, 5x, and of course 6x respectively on the Oppo. There isn't a mid-range zoom on the iPhone, but again, you can always take a 3x image somewhere in between. If it captures all the depth information, you can go into post and change it into a portrait image. This is something I've demonstrated on previous camera comparisons. It's that flexibility you got on the iPhone. In the 1x mode, portrait mode is actually really good on all of them, but ever so slightly, I've always said it, the rendition of a natural looking blur is really nice on iPhone, but honestly, between all of them, you cannot go wrong. I really like the image of the Oppo and the Samsung put together. I would say the skin rendition on the Oppo is slightly better, so I like it in this situation, but the blur, edge detection, the holes in between my arms, yeah, perfect on all of them. No complaints, man. And then when we move over to the 2x mode, I would say 2x, the Galaxy S24 Ultra holds up much better processing when it comes to image quality, skin rendition, edge detection, blur, exposure. Samsung takes this one for me, then the iPhone, and then the Oppo. Now we'll move over to 3x. Again, this is where you're seeing the 3x mode on the S24 Ultra and the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, 5x on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, because that's the next optical sensor. Man, the 5x on the iPhone 15 Pro Max is butter. Oh yeah, gotta give it to them. Really, really good. Now, I feel like the image softens up a bit too much on the Oppo, whereas I do give it credit where the edge detection and the blur is good. It does still look a little bit more artificial, and the Galaxy S24 Ultra nails it, really natural and soft. I just hope that the 3x becomes high resolution next time around on the S25 Ultra. But yeah, good luck. And we'll move over to the 5x and the 6x. Again, the 6x, the blur works. It just looks a bit artificial on the Find X7 Ultra. but the detail's much better on the 6X compared to the 3X, so I like it. The image just softened up a little bit on the 5X on the Galaxy S24 Ultra, but again, the blur's much more natural, much more consistent. I'm gonna be honest, in the super extended mode at 5X, 6X, and 5X, yeah, iPhone 15 Pro Max for this one. This part here is just a capture speed test, and it's quite unscientific, but the way I do it is I do a running motion and a jumping motion. So there's two parts to it. And it's just basically me running up to the camera, stopping, and then me jumping. And the whole idea is to see how many images I can capture that are stationary, unblurred, and being able to freeze the frame. So in this particular situation, we've seen great improvement with the capture speed default out of the box of the S24 Ultra. And then in this test, usually I've always had the iPhone perform best. But yeah, judge for yourself and see the capture speed and see which images are nice and sharp and unblurred, and the quantity being as successful as possible across these three devices. Time to turn off the lights and get some low light images between the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, Galaxy S24 Ultra, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. And you know how things get super extensive at this point. For anyone that's new here, that's experiencing my definitive camera comparison for the first time, what I like to do with nighttime images is I like to do nighttime shots without night mode on first for the fastest capturing experience, and then with night mode to see the difference in terms of the capturing speed and the image quality improvements, and flash where applicable in whichever modes it allows. So in this particular situation, that's what we're going to do. We'll start with the landscape images first. Now, apologies, I realized a bit later on that I had the watermark on for the Oppo, but yeah, it makes no difference to the image quality. It's just a visual presentation, so just bear with me on that one. Let's start with the ultra wide without night mode off. And in this particular situation, it is the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. I'm going to put a disclaimer out there. I almost feel like although the Oppo has a separate night mode feature like what you have on other devices and whatnot, and there's the moon icon that shows you that it is taking night mode, I never really feel like night mode is completely off. I feel like there's always some form of image processing. So just bear that in mind when it comes to the difference when we go into night mode. In this particular situation, definitely it's going to be the Oppo Find X7 Ultra with an asterisk and disclaimer. Next is the main wide sensor, and again, the image processing is really good across the board. Again, with an asterisk, it's the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, but I do like the clarity on the Galaxy S24 Ultra, followed by the iPhone 15 Pro Max. What I'm really liking about Samsung is this latest update has seemed to have fixed and handled the magenta shift around street lamps that tends to happen a lot. I really like the fact that they paid attention. Maybe they've been watching my videos, that's why they did this update, but it's a good look. I really like this. Good look on you, Samsung, for this one. Now into the 2X mode. Yep, the clarity again is really good across the board. Nothing that you can go wrong. Again, in terms of the image processing, I feel like night mode isn't completely off on the Oppo, so just put that out there. I like the image and the look of the Galaxy S24 Ultra though, without night mode, then followed by the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Now in the 3X mode, you can see that the auto lens switching is definitely off. It's default switching to the 3X, and the light sensitivity and the f-stop and the sensor size on the Galaxy S24 Ultra really falls apart. It is using that, it's not cropping in on the main sensor, whereas obviously the iPhone is still cropping in on the main sensor, whereas on the Oppo it's processing from that 3X. Now again, we'll go into the 5X, you can see it. This is the same thing. You would see that the image quality in terms of clarity is really good on the Samsung, but again, the exposure is very low. As expected, it's using a 5X, it's not cropping, night mode is not active. This is what you're seeing on the Oppo, and then the iPhone 15 Pro Max, the image does become very, very soft. 6X mode, again, not much difference to what you're seeing on the iPhone and the Galaxy S24 Ultra, and again, not much difference to what you're seeing on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. Suspicion is that it's probably cropping in on the main sensor, but again, just putting out there, that's the results that we're getting. Now, when we run it back with night mode active now, you can see a huge difference, especially for the Galaxy S24 Ultra and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. For the ultra wide, you got space and the time, hit up night mode. Yes, on the tripod, you're seeing exposure times go as high as 10 to 15 seconds. It can be quite unrealistic when it comes to handheld, but handheld is probably going to be less time, but it's worth using night mode for the ultra wide when it comes to the Galaxy S24 Ultra and iPhone 15 Pro Max. And again, you can see that with the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, there isn't really much difference. So I don't think it was really off. Now, when we go to the main wide sensor, again, the image processing is greatly improved and the magenta color shifting has been really fixed. I'm really happy to see this with the latest update on the Galaxy S24 Ultra for March. So this is a good look. Night mode difference in terms of the image processing really improves across the board, especially for the iPhone and the Samsung. And in the 2x mode, again, exposure, the clarity really improves. The image becomes very soft on the Oppo for some reason. We tried this many times. I don't think it was just agreeing with the night mode at 2x. So probably best to take without night mode. It's a very weird hit and miss experience when it comes to that. And we'll go to the 3x mode. The 3x mode for the Galaxy S24 Ultra greatly improves. Again, use night mode for the 3x if you've got the space and the time. It's a huge difference. It's literally night and day. It's so much better. And it's also greatly improved in terms of image processing on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, considering it is doing a 3x crop on the main wide sensor. We're going to the 5x mode. Personally, I don't like the image processing on the Galaxy S24 Ultra. With night mode, the exposure is better, but it just becomes way too oversaturated. And things like the foliage color of green really over exaggerates. It's not a good look. The iPhone 15 Pro Max definitely takes it here. And then when we go into the 6x mode, not much difference on the Oppo, and it's the same problem that you have on the Samsung. I'll give it to this one with night mode on the 5x and the 6x on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Now, when it comes to the front-facing camera selfie in low light, again, what I've done here is take it without night mode, then with night mode active, then with the front screen flash, and then with the portrait mode without night mode where applicable, and front screen flash where applicable. And again, the one phone that does not disappoint in being able to allow you to do in all the modes is the Galaxy S24 Ultra. And again, in terms of the image quality as well, with night mode, it really improves on the Galaxy S24 Ultra, and it handles exposure really nicely with the front screen flash, whereas obviously on the iPhone, it just blows it out and becomes way too noisy. The image becomes still muddy on the Oppo, whereas the Galaxy S24 Ultra holds up really well. And again, with the Galaxy S24 Ultra, when it comes to doing night mode and portrait selfie, it allows you to do that. The other two do not give you the ability to use night mode and portrait together. You can use the front screen flash and portrait together. Again, that reason alone, all the modes, image quality, definitely the Galaxy S24 Ultra. Right, last set of low light images with the rear camera with me in the frame as the subject. You're gonna see in this particular situation, it gets extensive. Again, without night mode active, then night mode and flash were applicable, and then running it again for portrait mode without night mode where it allows you to, and then the flash with portrait mode where it also allows you to. And in this particular situation, you're gonna see that the Galaxy S24 Ultra, although it doesn't do well in all situations, pretty much allows you to activate and use it in any mode, which is really good. You're gonna see some of the limitations on the Oppo and the iPhone 15 Pro Max if you've seen them already, but if not, we're gonna run through them right now. Right, first, without night mode active, ultra wide, I'll give this one slightly to the Oppo, but I would say I like the clarity of the S24 Ultra, even though the exposure is not as good. And then the iPhone 15 Pro Max, it just really falls apart. Now, moving over to the main wide sensor, again, quick asterisk and disclaimer, I don't really feel like night mode is ever completely off on the Oppo. Even if you're not shooting in the dedicated night mode and you deactivate the moon icon, I feel like it's still always doing something. Again, it processes very quickly, so maybe they're confident to keep doing that. Main wide sensor, Oppo wins it, but I would say in terms of the actual image quality and color rendition, I do like what I'm seeing on the Samsung and then the iPhone. Now moving over to 2x mode, again, the image does fall apart. In this particular situation, I will give it to the iPhone 15 Pro Max. And again, by asterisk, I think the Oppo is winning because of the exposure, but I don't really like the color rendition, which is much more accurate to nighttime in my skin on the iPhone and a Samsung. Now moving over to the 3x mode, yep, discount the Galaxy S24 Ultra altogether without night mode. You're gonna see that trend. Things do hold up a bit better on the Oppo, even though I don't really like the colors, but again, that looks great. And then the iPhone 15 Pro Max is very noisy and soft, but again, at least the exposure is done correct, considering it is doing a crop in the main wide sensor. Now 5x, again, completely discount both the iPhone and especially discount the Galaxy S24 Ultra. I'm non-existent. I'm basically an unlockable character at this point until we activate night mode. So yeah, just bear with us when it comes to it. I'll give it to Oppo for this particular one in this situation. And then when we move over to the 6x, again, all of them just fall apart. Let's run it back again. Now with night mode active, you can see the difference, especially on the Samsung and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Very reminiscent of what we saw with the landscape shots. Not much difference with the Oppo because again, I don't think night mode is really off in terms of the image processing. Yeah, the Samsung and the iPhone use night mode on the ultra wide. Big difference between them when it comes to it. Now, main wide sensor, again, such an improvement when it comes to the Galaxy S24 Ultra and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. It's such a good look in that sense. And they're quite even. Probably the only thing I would say is that the color of my jacket in terms of color rendition is ever so slightly more accurate on the Galaxy S24 Ultra, so I'll give it to that. But yeah, can't go wrong with both with night mode on the main wide sensor. 2x mode, again, great improvement. I would say skin rendition is better on the Galaxy S24 Ultra compared to it being slightly red on the iPhone, but again, the Oppo, same as before, even with night mode active, so just bear that in mind. Now, 3x mode, again, while the 3x difference on the Galaxy S24 Ultra with night mode, use that 3x with night mode. It is a night and day difference, and even the image processing, spot on accurate. Samsung takes this one completely when it comes to night mode active at 3x. Now, in a 5x mode, again, it's better improved on the Samsung, but it's not that great. I feel like there's a bug and there's an issue when it comes to 5x night mode processing for the Samsung. I'll definitely give this one to the iPhone, and I'll give this one to the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. A bit of a difference when it comes to the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. Now, 6x, again, I would say that although the exposure is really improved, I do not know what's going on when it comes to the foliage exaggeration and the color processing being so off with night mode when it comes to 5x and 6x. Yeah, I'll definitely give this one to the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Running it back again for the third time, now with flash activated, start on the ultra wide. The Galaxy S24 Ultra does not allow you to use flash and ultra wide together. I think this is just a software oversight from Samsung. Samsung, if you're watching this, you cannot use flash and ultra wide together. I know mid-range phones that allow you to do this. Just give us the ability to do that. It's great for group pictures in low light where you can still use flash and have a wider field of view and good image quality. Now, the iPhone flash is really, really powerful, as well as the Oppo one really activating through. I like the look of the Oppo, and then followed by the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Now, moving over to the main wide sensor, yeah, the Galaxy S24 Ultra's flash is really not all that powerful. I'll definitely give it to the exposure look of the iPhone 15 Pro Max. And then the Oppo overbears it a bit much, but again, in terms of lack of noise and clarity is there, give it to the iPhone first when it comes to flash with the wide sensor. 2x mode, I'll definitely say give it to the Oppo, and then the Galaxy S24 Ultra, then the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Now, in a 3x mode, this particular situation is strange. The only one that really still fires a very powerful flash is still going to be the iPhone 15 Pro Max, but because it doesn't have a mid-range zoom and it's still doing a crop on the main wide sensor, the image quality is still not that great. Whereas the Galaxy S24 Ultra, the flash isn't really that powerful, but it still flashes. The image quality is better, but the exposure is not that great. Whereas with the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, anything past 2x is an always-on bulb mode. It doesn't actually generate a pulsating flash. So in terms of exposure, not sure why it has that limitation, but that's something that's there. It does look ever so slightly better on it. Now, moving over to the 5x, again, the flash on the Galaxy S24 Ultra is just not that powerful, so it becomes non-redundant for the 5x being actually aided. So night mode is going to be best, but you do take a sacrifice in weird image processing. Whereas the Oppo still looks the best, whereas the iPhone, yeah, the image is soft, even though the flash is very powerful. And 6x, again, same principle. It's gonna be the Oppo by default in some way, even though the flash is more powerful on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. The image quality just really falls apart. Now, with the standard pictures done, time for portrait mode with the rear camera with me in the frame as the subject. 1x, and again, you can just see the image processing. Although you don't have the option for night mode and portrait mode together, I think it's just blending it on the Oppo. So yeah, just bear that in mind. Now, with night mode off on the S24 Ultra and the iPhone 15 Pro Max, the S24 Ultra for me definitely looks better than the iPhone, but all of them do a great job in actually nailing the blur, even with the gaps in between my arms. So this is a good look. And then when you're in the 2x mode, the iPhone just wasn't playing ball, just didn't want to work. We worked by getting as close as possible to give it a chance to do it. It just wasn't working. But on the Oppo and the Samsung, it was working great. And the fact that you do have the ability to take it without night mode completely off on the Galaxy S24 Ultra, I'm going to give it to the S24 Ultra. 3x mode, definitely I would say give it to the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. But I'll give credit, Galaxy S24 Ultra without night mode is still blurred and has great edge detection. So just basing it on the blur and edge detection, even with the 3x, it's a good look. I like it. Did a lot better than I was expecting. 5x again just wasn't really playing ball when it comes to portrait mode on the Samsung and the iPhone. It blurred on the Oppo, so by default I've got to give it to the Oppo just for being able to activate the blur with portrait mode at 5x. Now we tried again closer with 5x on the Samsung, and it did it ever so slightly, but it wasn't really by much because it was just struggling to capture light to do it. So still going to Oppo, but again, this is nothing to sing about. Right, with night mode active with portrait mode, you don't have this option at all on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, but we can all agree it kind of feels like it's night moding by default in portrait mode. So just consider that. But with night mode active on the Galaxy S24 Ultra and the iPhone 15 Pro Max, it's a good look, great improvement across all of them. I still like it better on the S24 Ultra just because of the skin rendition, but the blur is great on both the iPhone and the Samsung as well as the Oppo. Now, when we go into 2X mode, here's where some of the limitations creep up. Samsung does allow you to use night mode and 2X portrait mode together. The night mode and 2X portrait is not something you can do on the iPhone. You can only do night mode and portrait mode on the 1X on the iPhone. So again, that's a point that goes to the Galaxy S24 Ultra and of course the Oppo as well, which can do it in the 2X mode. Same for 3X mode. You've got night mode, the ability to put that together on the Galaxy S24 Ultra. The image is softer, so I'm gonna give this one to the Oppo. It does look better in terms of clarity, and also blur is done respectively well. And again, when we go to the extended zoom mode, I would say the exposure is better on the Samsung, but the image is just very, very soft. So again, nothing to write home about, but I will give it to the Oppo. But the exposure is better, but I would say the Oppo because of the clarity, even though it's slightly darker and the blur is still there. Final round with portrait mode, flash. Now, you cannot use flash at all with portrait mode on the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, which is disappointing. I hope Oppo does a software update to allow you to do flash with portrait mode with the rear cameras all together. I think it's going to be very useful. You can do it on the selfie. You should be able to do it on the rear camera. The Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra, no issues there. And then the 1X mode on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, again, no issues there. There's just this weird lighting effect around my eye for the iPhone. But again, the Galaxy S24 Ultra definitely does a great job next to the iPhone. Now we'll move into the 2X mode. You're going to see this weird bug that I've come across. We did it 3 times, but we're going to show you right now. 2X with flash and portrait mode causes this weird field of view bug and autofocusing issue on the Galaxy S24 Ultra. I've demonstrated this many times. Samsung needs to look into this. It's a weird one. You don't have this issue on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. It does allow you to use the flash, 2X and portrait mode together. Second time round, you can see it different positioning, same issue again. Third time round, different positioning, same issue again. There is a bug on the 2X flash with portrait mode with the rear camera on the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. It's a weird one, but again, it's something that is there. Now 3X, again, you do see an improvement. I would say that the 3X mode with flash by default goes to the Galaxy S24 Ultra because it allows you to use 3X with the flash together. But again, whether you like the image quality is really up to you. And then in the 5X mode, it does improve a bit better where the blur is activated. It does see better exposure. So I'll give it to that, then the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, and then the iPhone 15 Pro Max. But actually technically flipping it around, because you can't use the flash with the 6X and portrait together on Oppo, it loses this round. It would be the S24 Ultra, iPhone 15 Pro Max, then the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. And last, I did a capture speed test with a running motion and jumping motion in low light for the Galaxy S24 Ultra, Oppo Find X7 Ultra, and iPhone 15 Pro Max. So have a look and see which one freezes the frame the most. This one is quite intense, but again, I thought let me just throw it in there for this camera comparison. So a quick roundup conclusion of my thoughts after this definitive camera comparison between the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, Galaxy S24 Ultra and iPhone 15 Pro Max. I would say as a Swiss Army knife all-rounder, the Galaxy S24 Ultra remains undefeated. That does not mean it's perfect everywhere. There's a few processing image issues here and there and things it doesn't do outright perfect, but it's the only system that allows you to maximize in all the modes. 8K video recording, and also things like 4K 120 slow motion on a wide and ultra wide, and things like being able to shoot all the different modes in low light with no limitations, with night mode, flash, portrait mode, you name it, it can pretty much do it. Whether well or not, it allows you to. So That's a great statement piece for an Ultra device. Now, in terms of what my favorite camera hardware system is, it's definitely the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. They answered one thing I've been crying for: a camera system with an ultra wide, a 1x, a 3x, and a 6x zoom on both mid-range, and all of them being high resolution and the same resolution. They've done this, and the image processing is fast, is really good. I like it, but again, few things missing, such as video portrait mode being at 4K on the selfie and array cameras, using optical sensors in those modes, and also being able to change the blur before and after the fact, and some night mode features with flash and night mode that it should allow you to pretty much do. But apart from that, it's on a great path. I like the camera hardware. It's my favorite hardware on a smartphone camera system right now. And when it comes to the iPhone, when it comes to things like the smoothness of transitions through lens switching, it is so good. And the image quality when it comes to video, definitely iPhones still take just that bit better image quality. Stabilization is nice and smooth. I do wish there was more usability when it comes to the UI, such as being able to pause video recording and continue on the same clip, flip to the selfie camera, and have 8K video recorder mode. The image processing and power is definitely there, and it's consistent when it comes to the blur and the look of it. I do like the iPhone in that sense. And obviously the things like being able to change the blur after the fact in edit and video portrait mode up to 4K 30. So that's my conclusion. What's your thoughts on this definitive camera comparison between these three devices? Let me know in the comment section below. That's it for me, Ben from Lover of Tech. If you enjoy videos like this, you know exactly what to do. Hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you're part of Team TLS, the Tech Lover Squad, so you don't miss any future videos on the channel. I hope you're all safe during this time. I will catch you in the next one. Peace.